on there. I'm sure that our creative staff will come up with ways to make a snazzy entrance. So, but yeah, the bollards are up and ready to go. The cameras have been installed. As far as I know, they're not active because I haven't, the IT installed something on my computer, but there's no actual access yet. I did receive screenshots of any cameras that were sort of directed at nearby neighbors, and they're all masked up, so you basically only can see to the top of a fence or down to the sidewalk, and it's very clear line of sight, at least on the exterior of the building. The misting has started. This is equipment we've been waiting for a while. We are going to have that done before work on Monday through Friday, as well as after work on Friday and after work on Saturdays, so that we can cover the Friday and Saturdays with custodial help. There should never be any staff in the building when the misting goes through. There are some employee concerns about it, and we've been working with facilities to make sure that we handle the cleaning. It is important that we have some of these cleaning protocols in place, otherwise we can't be open. So I wish we didn't have to do it as well, but that's the situation we're in. Also, the annual elevators inspection is scheduled for the end of December. I think I told you last time there was a walkthrough testing of all the fire lights and the fire systems. That goes through quarterly, and in general, facilities has been great about continuing to do the preventative maintenance, even though we're only on we're on a less than full schedule. Our circulation service for the month of November was absolutely amazing. We were at 61% of our normal circulation, which that's just the physical circulation. That's not including ebooks or anything like that. So I think in view of our modified services, that's actually quite respectable. I'll be curious to see whether we have a bit of a drop in December, if people are a little tired, or if they're, as obviously as cases go up and the community stays, a little wary, we may be having fewer people willing to come out. We increased our reservations in November by over 500. We went from 700 to 1250. And most of them are for the browsing appointments. And I would hazard a guess that reservation number that is actually a little shy on the physical number of people in the building, because families can make reservations. And so one person will make a reservation to go to the children's room, and they'll bring 2 or 3 kids or a partner. And so those are the numbers of people coming into the building during the month. I mean, obviously it's not the 20,000 that we're used to, but they're getting up there. And I think the increase in study and workspace has been very notable. We anticipate that dropping off this week and next, because most of the schools and colleges will be done with their assignments. So we've had a lot of students in the building just working for a couple hours on those finals and final papers. Any questions about our in-library services or circulation?
Are you continuing with Sundays?
Yep.
Okay.
It just seems to be fine. We'll run that all the way through May, which is when it's scheduled to go through. Obviously, we'll close it if we have to close it. I think it's not hugely used, but it is used, and the people who use it really seem to like it. I think we know that from past experience. So if for some reason we have to modify hours, I think we would try to do everything we could to make sure that the services were offered 7 days a week. I think the only thing that would prevent us from doing that is if somehow we had to close and modify our staffing structure so that, go back like on that 410 rotation or something like that. If we got back to that bad of a situation, we'd have to reconsider the number of days. But other than that, we'll try to strive to have the 7 days a week opportunities as long as we can.
Great.
2 super important dates we'd love to have you involved and attend and spread the information out to your networks. January 6th is our first Pulse of Reading 2021. It's going to be Let's Talk About Race. So that is going to be in the typical sort of community conversation posts of Reading format where everybody, we kind of get together, we do plenary shares, and then we do breakout groups. And then so we have, that's going to be facilitated by Deb Gilbert and Monique Nonrantham. And we're hoping to get a good turnout on that. So we're gonna spread the word on that. And then 2 weeks after that, also on a Wednesday, there's going to be an hour-long grounded knowledge panel, the Black Experience in Reading. This is being facilitated by Dr. Valerie Joseph out of Smith College. I will be using gift funds of some sort or donation funds. You know, this will not be used. I didn't ask the friends to support this, nor did I, nor will we pay for it out of municipal funds. It will be paid for out of gifts, but this woman is, she puts together this panel. We've gotten 3, possibly 4 people of color from the Reading community. She meets with them, she plans out this conversation, and then she facilitates the experience. And in the virtual format, it's done in a webinar so that the panelists are the only people you see on the screen, and everybody else who attends, who registers to attend, is then witnessing to their conversation. And it's an extremely vulnerable and really powerful situation. And if you're interested to know more about it, I can send you information about Dr. Joseph, as well as an example of her. There's like a SoundCloud clip of her doing it at Smith College. She's also worked with the University of Colorado. So it's something that we think will go together nicely with the conversation about race. The winter reading program for children is on its way. We're only a few days into it, but we have 80 days of reading for children. It's fantastic. I hope you've had a chance to look at it. And not to leave adults out, we are doing some sort of winter warmers at some point. Our staff are doing their work and picking their books. I don't think it will be a live program, or it may be a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous programming. We certainly do have a lot of books and readings and listenings to recommend to folks. And I know it's a tradition that we want to make sure we can kind of modify COVID style. I also submitted a letter of intent for a grant, an LSTA grant from the MBLC, for which we're eligible for since we filed our strategic plan. The grant is for between $7,500 and $10,000. As with any grant, I would have to specify what programs and outcomes we want to have with this. But the name of the grant is called Civic Hub, and I think you all will agree that there are lots of ways with the community networking, engaging, and learning with community. Those particular sections of our strategic plan that are really well aligned with that. In terms of other partnerships, we've been very active with the Neighborly Notes. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but that's something Dementia Friendly started, and it's really a cooperative program with folks from the Pleasant Street Center and Reading Cooperative Bank and the Pearl Street residents of Pearl Street and the schools, and basically it gets all funneled through the Elder and Human Services, the Pleasant Street Center folks. They are getting just sort of they're mostly anonymous, or like its privacy is protected. The person receiving it and the person sending it doesn't necessarily get the information, but they're just supposed to be nice notes to say to folks who are getting things like Meals on Wheels, and we're sending it to our homebound patrons. Just cheery notes to let people know that we're thinking of them. And sometimes there's a lot of prompts for children. We've had the children's librarians have sent out some prompts for kids to send these things. Sometimes they're drawing, sometimes they're school is really weird. There's some really interesting messages that have gone out. So it's a lot of work coordinating this, but it's gotten some really good feedback. The other thing is we are promoting Mask Up Reading. We are supposed to have another banner put up in front of the studio like we did with the safe voting. I'm not sure quite where that is. We've received the flyers, and basically we're trying to hand them out to people. Hello?
It's up.
Oh, it's
sorry.
up?
It's
okay.
up. Yeah.
Okay. I don't drive around that side of the building, obviously. I didn't notice it. So we have the flyers, and we're trying to get those out into the hands of people as they come into the library, whether it's to pick up their materials or or, as they're coming in for an appointment. But this is a town-wide. I'm sure you've seen the road signs, and there's probably going to be a banner at Town Hall, and they've put it up at the playgrounds and all the other spaces where people tend to gather. Finally, we had our first round of screening interviews for the public services position, head of public services, which is an assistant director level position, with Lorraine Berry retiring in January. The second round of reviews is tomorrow. I want to thank Monette, who's going to sit in and participate with that. It's really nice to have a trustee involved when we're at this level of hiring. Just as a perspective, if not only do you have a great background in that, but it's also, I have to say, it's been really difficult to go through these applications and even the first round of interviews and not constantly be saying, but Lorraine would have done this and Lorraine would have said, because there is no replacing Lorraine. She has almost 30 years of institutional knowledge. So it's an opportunity, an opportunity, and an opportunity, not a challenge. So we definitely need some, good perspective and someone who will give us some good critical questioning. So thanks for that. And that's pretty much it for the director's report.
Okay, I'm just going up to the. Okay, so then thank you, Amy. So the next item is the position for the Reading Alliance for Equity and Social Justice position. So I know that Amy, thank you for sending everything out, and I know Monette, you sent your some information that you had put together too. So
yeah. So I'll just start by saying that I should be sharing my screen now. And I have Monette's comments. Monette primarily seemed to comment, your comments were primarily with the frequently asked questions, I believe.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then which worked out really well, because what I worked on was the actual job description and mostly just the summary. So I don't know if you want to start, Monette, with your comments and questions, or.
Well, sure. Do you want to, can you bring it up and share it, Amy?
Can you see that? Let me see here. I'll try this new share.
Yes.
Yes. This is you?
This is me.
Yeah, great.
So just a couple of things. I felt like there were, at different points in time, it was being called different things. And so I wanted to just highlight that. And I think we need to be consistent with the wording that we're using. So for instance, here I highlighted advisory and action group, but above it, we say it's a town department established committee. So are we a committee or are we an action group? And just to be consistent with what we are, or what it's being called. And I think that, I think either's fine. I just want to be consistent across the board. And then right there, when we say structurally emulating the Reading Coalition for Prevention and Support, I know that that's true, but to me, that doesn't seem like it fits in the job description.
Okay.
And I think that the bullets above it were saying that, and then that was kind of almost a little redundant.
Yep. Okay.
And then I just was stipulating there, I believe at the point that this would be published, that it's now a former Human Relations Advisory Committee, correct?
Well, there's two things. One is the Ad Hoc Human Relations Committee, and then HRAC is the Human Relations Advisory Committee. So I'm not sure when HRAC, there's two groups.
Yeah.
And one is definitely sunsetting. The Ad Hoc Committee is definitely sunsetting in December. I am not sure how long HRAC will exist, or whether it will exist until this kind of gets going. That's a question that we need to clarify.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it is assumed that it will become, the members who wanted to serve on HRAC will, be given consideration to serve on this Action Advisory Committee.
Okay. So then I guess just to give some overall context for everybody, I'm a huge fan of frequently asked questions. Typically, when I am reading something, if I'm not getting it, I go immediately to the frequently asked questions and assume that whoever authored this is going to answer the questions that I'm looking for. So I tried to put myself in the shoes of a town meeting member who hasn't been following this and is
Okay.
now going to be asked to vote on it and is looking to just, get some quick context. So that was where I was coming at it from. When I read these questions overall, I think it would be helpful if we group them in two sections. One is really more towards the committee, and one section's geared towards the director position, because I think they're two distinct questions and two distinct areas for education.
I agree. That's a good point.
Okay. So one of the assumptions that I made in doing this is that the Human Relations Advisory Committee was sunsetting. So I misunderstood that. And so when I answered the question of why do we need this, I thought it was important to say that that committee was sunsetting, but yet our community believes that there's still a long-term need. So I was saying, I think
Yes.
that we want to address this head on. Why do we think we need this? And we should speak specifically to Reading and give examples, like the SWAT stick is at the high school. I know that's just one example, and there are many others, but I think we should highlight what's been going on in our community, and that this is in response to the hate that we've seen in our community.
Right. So it's not like and I think that's a really good point. And one of the things I want to stress is that, and I talked about this with Josh Goldust, is that I don't think anyone is saying that the volunteer HRAC was doing a crappy job or a bad job. This is that their work will continue. It'll be morphed. I mean, it's not eliminated. It's incorporated,
Right.
because we need more, because we need them and we need more. And so this is sort of a restructuring of that. So I think that to that point, again, you're talking about the committee piece of it, which is the community involvement and participatory piece of that.
Right.
I think Monette's comment about needing something specific would be a really good idea.
Okay.
I think that people need to understand the rationale behind it all.
Yeah.
And not just that we're doing it because I don't know why, but we're doing it because of some specific events that have occurred.
Right.
And, it's also, I mean, just to sort of look at it from like a resource perspective, I mean, I think that the fact that, where it's shared resources between different areas in the town is really important. And that is mentioned. So, I think certainly mentioning the specific instances and being specific about that is important, but it also just does seem to be, a streamlined approach to like addressing this in the town. It's like, everyone would be on the same page. It's sharing resources between different parts of the town. So I think that part's really important to include in this as well, which I think, because it just ties it together a little bit with why, this position would be within the library specifically. It's not just for the school. It's not, just for students. It's kind of supposed to be across the board.
I agree, Nina. And I also think it's sort of, it's helpful to let people know how many agencies and organizations in town were actually in agreement and on board with this. Because it's really quite an achievement to get them all on the same page. When you think, back to when this all started, that would have been impossible. So, I mean, it really does add, I think, strength to the position and to the need.
Oh, so that's a really good point. And I know Michelle is madly taking notes. I'm trying to take some notes too. And I guess I just want to make sure, Andrew, that you're listening with as we go into your final ad hoc committee, that you're not hearing anything that that what you're hearing is aligned with and just sort of refining what the work of the ad hoc committee. So please feel free to jump in anytime if you feel we're
No, I think it's all in line so far.
Yeah, wave your hands.
Yep.
Michelle, to that point, I know you're taking notes. I think what Alice said would be another great addition to the FAQ. what support is there in the town for this position, and then we list all the different organizations that came together to support this. Sometimes technology freaks me out, like when I talk and someone starts typing in red.
Okay.
But I think that's good, because then you can list, the police department, and
Yeah.
and that shows support across the board.
Okay.
Okay, so then I took the second half of question number 1 and created a new question number 2. I think what the question should say is, how will this organization make a difference in our town? And then this is the answer. I tried to
Right.
break them apart because when the answers get too long, people lose interest. So we want quick hits.
Okay.
Question 3 would be new. How is this organization different than the Human Relations Advisory Committee? And this is where I thought it was sunsetting. So,
Well, and I think that's still a good question, and it will sunset. So, okay.
okay. So then back to this one. I think this is a good question. I just wanted to tighten up the answer a bit to make it more concise. So I was thinking traditional town committees per the Reading Home Charter are restricted to town residents only. It's important that this committee is inclusive of families who participate in the METCO program and whose children are educated in our town. It is also important to include faith-based leaders whose houses of worship are outside of our town, but whose parishioners live in our community.
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
The next one, I think we want to reword the question to say, if this is not a town committee and not subject to open meeting law, will it lack transparency? I think we should just hit
Gotcha.
it head on.
Okay. Yep.
Got it.
Okay, and then I just kind of wordsmith the answer a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to make it more, instead of using things like could and would, I think we need to say can and will.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Why this structure in particular? I mean, I think that answers it. But again, for someone who doesn't know a lot about the Reading Coalition of Prevention and Support, I'm not sure it really answers it, but I wasn't really sure how better to answer it.
Mm.
I also think there's confusion around, is it our CASA?
It's former Arcasa.
I know. And I know somewhere that is explained, but it felt very wordy.
Yep. No,
So-
and keep in mind, right? So we've had presentations, we've had, we've had several of these facts, we've had other proposals. So
right.
a lot of this feels like it's,
Yep.
repeating the same thing. But I agree that I think that structure question, Monette, actually really speaks to what you were saying in terms of why this, that structure and the committee issue, right? So that's the reason, because the Reading Coalition has business owners and people who are really concerned about, people who work in, recovery homes and things like that. So it is a broader, but it affects everybody in our town, and they work with police and the schools and the library and the elder and human services. So so it's very similar in terms of meeting townwide needs.
Maybe at the top of the FAQ, there's a glossary, if you will, that says something like our CASA equals Reading Coalition of, where you explain it.
Yeah.
And HRAC is just so that people follow the language.
Yep. Coalition.
And would the glossary also contain definitions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, not just not just the full name, but also what it does or what it means.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we can look through that, and if you have suggestions, I can add. I mean, I like a lot of documents. I mean, I think this will be evergreen, and this is something that we'll want to post publicly. And as people have new questions, we'll add to it.
Yeah.
And if we can't answer it, that's where we would go out to, even after the ad hoc committee sunsets. I'm sure we can go out to some or a group of them and say like, oh, we had a question about this word. This is how we're going to choose to interpret and define it. Do you have anything you'd like to add? So, but I think that's a great idea. Okay.
Okay, back. Yep, that one. Okay, so why the library in particular? So you'll see my comment there. I believe the big part of the decision was because the library is a place of inclusion for all in our community. And when I was writing that, I was thinking, gosh, but anybody reading that is going to think, so what? The schools aren't inclusive, or? But what I wanted to say is that it's inclusive of all, regardless of age, because it's not school based, regardless of religion, because it doesn't matter what faith you practice. So it transcends all of that. We're the one place in the community that truly transcends all of that.
I'll make it better. Transcends many other exclusions. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, you know, I don't know. It's probably bad to say that it's very, you know, Catholic or it's very, you know, democratic or something like that. But, you know, because those all have other, you know, senses attached to them. But I think you're right, Monette. I think part to say is that, you know, it's truly a community center and with connections to all of these other sort of more specialized, you know, areas of work and focus.
Right. Okay. And then I just wanted to make the point that I know in tandem with this, there was a subgroup looking back at our mission and vision.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to make sure that this reflects that thinking.
Yeah.
That we're tying it to.
So we need to update that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
That's all updated.
Okay. I thought number 6 was good. Number 7, I don't necessarily have an issue with it, but it really surprised me.
Yeah.
Is it a concern that's been raised along the way?
I'm going to punt that one to Andrew.
Andrew?
I think it has been mentioned. I don't know. It was a big issue, but
okay. It felt like a weighty question. We're after reading the others. So I
wonder if, you know, unless it's been a specific concern, because I agree with you, Monette. Like when I was reading it too, it did feel weighty. That's a good word to describe it. And if it has been an issue that's been specifically raised, then I think it's fine to leave in. But I also think if it does stand out and feel too weighty, I think that, you know, just that sentence about encouraging dialogue and community conversation, you know, could be incorporated into another answer. In terms of like, why is this, you know, because one of the earlier questions about like, why is this important? Why do we want this? Why do we need this? I think that sentence could fit in really well into that.
And I think maybe if we don't reference the First Amendment rights, because the real issue that I recall being raised was just, you know, it's really getting into the whole cancel culture issue.
Right.
Is this going to quell openness and communication? So the answer is really gets to the question, but not referencing First Amendment rights.
Because I seem to remember, you know, there were also, like, I know that we've heard, you know, concerns about politicizing, you know, the library and, you know, taking a stand versus not. And so I think that it is important to like make it clear that that's not at all the intent, and it is really more about, community conversation and openness. And I do agree. Like, I almost feel like the question about infringing on First Amendment rights almost sounds like on the defense, which, I'm not saying that it is, but I think that maybe we could sort of, put that up into the previous question about why this group is important.
Or maybe
Unless
make it
that
into
starts to become a question, and then by all means, I don't think it's a problem to have it. I just,
Yeah. It was a combination of seeing First Amendment rights and then the use of the word illegal. That is what really made me pause.
Mhm.
I think that so I think there's a conflation of a couple concerns here. One is there is a direct link to this and the swastikas as hate speech, and and I know there was some concerns there, like, are you going to tell someone they can't put a swastika on a school? Yes, actually, we are going to say you can't put a swastika on a school. But that's a behavioral issue. So that's about making sure that the behaviors. So there was some concerns when the swastikas first came out that people were going to be told what to think and how to think by sort of an authoritarian group of people that would tell them how to think and what to think. So that's where I think the kernel of some of this is, and some of that is conflated with, and I think with no evidence, with the power to make policy and enforce. So I do think that there is some sentiment out there, like that this position and this committee would say, well, this town is never going to use the word African American again. They're always going to use Black. But that's not the power, nor is that the policy. That's not the purpose of this. So I think we've sort of answered the question without answer, but it's not the question that's being answered. I think there's two. One is what authority or policy making decisions will this committee have? And the answer is none. It's not a policy board. If it were a policy board, it would be named as a policy board like FinCom, or it would be approached town meeting or the bylaw committee. So that's what those things are for. So this is not a policy making board. It's simply education and empowerment and engagement board. So there's an authority issue, and power
I think that's
issue.
a great question and answer right there, what you just said.
What did I just say? No.
And I almost feel like it kind of goes into why this structure in particular, that question about, it's not meant to be a authority, where it's like another board where they're voting and creating policies. I think that part of the this seems to kind of fit into why this structure. It's more about conversation and in educating and communication, and less about creating policies and laws and anything like that. So I kind of feel like that ties into why this structure in particular, that question.
Right. And I do think that that's part of what the goal would be, is that this committee could then go to the library and then go to the trustees, or we could report out and say, gosh, we've done these 4 programs and we did these 3 surveys, and it really seems like there may be a need for such and such a policy, and we'll put it in the hands of the bylaw committee, or we'll put it in the hands of the CPDC, or whoever has to make the decision. I have no idea why the community planning district commission or whatever group would do it, but I think that would be the idea.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you all?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Okay, so question 8. I didn't put any comments here, but I just wanted to say I was running out of time a little bit by the time I got to here. But this is the one where I felt like there were so many words, like the Reading Coalition for Prevention and Support, formerly the Reading Coalition Against Substance Abuse. So I think we really want, all of that is true, but I think we want to just really condense it. Why do we have a paid director? because the town thinks it's a priority.
Because nobody's going to do it for nothing,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also don't.
frankly.
I agree, Cherry. And I don't know if I don't even know if we need to mention the Reading Coalition for Prevention and Substance. I think that maybe we don't need that because it is a different thing that we're talking about, really. So I think you're right, saying that it's a priority and that it's important to find someone who has this background, this education, this experience to really do this properly, means it's a paid director position. And I think the whole benefit of this is that it's not asking other town employees to become experts in something new. You know what I mean? So I think really highlighting
A director would be able to, as you just said, would be able to help the other people in the community and be a sort of resource for information and how to go about doing things that they may not know how to do on their own.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have somebody who's in a paid position, then I think at some point the job doesn't really get done.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think there's also a recognition that while there are many, many well-meaning volunteers in town, in general, the volunteers lack the expertise that's needed to move this forward.
Yeah.
And so we
That's good.
need to hire someone who's skilled and experienced and support them with a committee of people who are caring and have vision, but don't have the expertise and the skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You also
I think
need
that's the real reason.
consistent.
But
Say that, Andrew?
I think that's the real reason. I just think it needs a paid position. It's just there is a skill set you're not going to find in your average volunteer.
Yeah.
And you need
And the time commitment.
consistency as well.
And the time commitment, right?
Yeah, you need consistency.
Oh, that's a
One
good point.
person needs to be in charge
Right.
to keep everything on an even keel.
Okay. Great. We're almost at the end, 9 and 10.
Yep. And 9 was great. 10, again, I just sort of made me wonder, is this a question people are really asking? This was another one just surprised me. It's not weighty in any way. It doesn't bother me that it's on here. It just more surprised me.
Yeah. The funding's always a question. So the first is the funding for the person. And I think we can all agree that the funding of a person cannot be funded through fundraising or grants, that the person needs to be funded as a salaried expense. Mm-hmm. I think what comes up is if we are talking about community-wide programming and training and education, there's going to be some money attached to that. Even if this person is really equipped to do some of it, we will have consultants or we might have speakers or things like that. So who's going to pay for that? I know there's money in the schools for they have their professional development. They also have their, initiatives. We have our initiatives. I think there's some gaps. There's not necessarily initiatives in other town departments. So there are ways that some monies will come from here and there. So there is some questions like who's actually going to pay for a speaker on, who's, right now I can pay for one person to come and do this grounded knowledge panel. But if we were to do that on a regular basis, then, that would require funding, and it's not necessarily, that's why I didn't ask the friends, because I don't want it to come out of, our musical programming for kids. So, or if it is something going to be the friends support, then we need to really look at the budget structure. But, and I think there will be a need to do fundraising eventually.
Okay, so I think we want to break this into two questions then. The first question, which I think a lot of people want to understand, is how is this director position being paid for? And I think we want to answer it by saying, although the director will sit in the library, it is not out of the library's budget. These are town funds.
I can do a write-up. I realized I had sort of said I would do a write-up based on that one email that I sent out about how it would have to be, it would, because technically it would be part of the library's budget, but we would
Right.
be tracking it separately.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
Right. It does eventually, because it's someone who reports to me, it still becomes on the, it comes under our whole thing.
Right. So we want to be clear on that because we don't ever want anybody to say you said this, but now I see it on your budget. But
Right.
the point that the town every year is putting that money specifically into our budget for that. It's not taking
Right.
away from library services. in any way.
Correct. Correct.
And then the
we
second part is how is any programming being funded?
And I think, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but we kind of touched a little bit on this on the ad hoc last Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day it was that part of this is if this progresses and this grows, and for some reason the whole town decides to reorganize and this position ends up being within, we could pick this up and, the way that we're structuring it will be part of the library budget, but at any time, it can also be picked up separately and put in the police department, the human services department, the schools.
Yep.
And it's not going to affect the staffing for all the other library programming that we do or the budget for all the other library programming that we do necessarily. So that's the intent. Does that make sense? Lynette
Yeah,
and Sherry? Yeah, okay.
yeah, it does.
Because we don't know what the town will look like in 10 years. We can assume what it will look like, but things change.
As evidenced by 2020.
I was going to say.
Who knew? All right, I feel very comfortable with this document now. Alice?
I had one other thing, the last meeting, there was a grammatical issue with and or, and in this document, it's still and.
Right, that's the people, I know what you're talking about.
It's on the second page at the top, or what is it, right after the proposed structure. And it's in this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th bullet.
Isn't it like if you, people
It's at
who,
I'm sorry, it's not in the FAQs, it's in the description
Oh.
of the organization itself.
okay,
The first thing we looked at.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
So it's in that bullet right there.
or live, right, who, or
And
members,
the third line, work,
Or-
comma, and worship, it's got to be or worship.
right. Because you don't have to be all of those things.
Otherwise, you're going to have nobody. Yeah. Some
You're right.
wordsmith is going to figure that out. And
Yeah, I will do a scan between the
Okay.
frequently asked questions and to Manup's point about what we call things, advisory and action group or whatever, or director. So, and because of course I'm a director too, so there's the term is and Michelle's an assistant director. So, so I will make sure I will try to do a scan for consistency between the frequently asked questions, the and you are like right up here, it does say it will be subsumed by into this new organization, Monette, as well as the job description. In general, do people feel comfortable that if this were the frequently asked questions, that you as a board of trustees feel comfortable that this is something, this format and the structure as it's explained here and laid out is something that you're comfortable with?
Yes.
I do, yeah. And Monette, thank you for all
Monette,
the
yeah.
work that you did with that. That was really great.
Oh, happy to. It made me feel a lot better about it.
Yeah, I think that
Sit
was
down and really look at it.
Mhm.
Okay, I've now saved that somewhere. I'm not sure where, but I saved it somewhere. So that brings us to the, and again, I can scan for consistency and some other things here. A lot of what the majority of those frequently asked questions do talk about the committee, which I think the action and advisory and action committee, action and advisory committee, And I think that was where, as the ad hoc committee started, that's where they began. And then, you know, kind of developed this, well, we need a person in charge. To Sherry's point, we need somebody to decide, you know, what people need to do. So then we come to the director position, the director of equity and social justice. And I actually was suggesting we just call it the director of equity and social justice, but the committee can be called the Reading Alliance for Equity and Social Justice. I'm sure that's a semantic issue. But what I tried to do here is, it seemed like the job description, at least in the summary piece, spoke more about the committee versus the actual job. So what I worked on, and I had some comments from some of you, which I really appreciated your feedback, was to really talk about this position. It's the position for this person, the responsibilities that this person would have, and sort of the structural piece behind it. I did not play much with the actual bullet points. I think those can be wordsmithed at any time. And if anybody has been working in 2020, we all know that our job descriptions are as the other duties as assigned. So we'll gotta go with that. But the gist of it is the director of equity and social justice is a municipal position that fosters a culture of diversity, belonging, and inclusion. It's based out of the library, and this position works collaboratively within the town on programs, projects, and initiatives focusing on shared humanity, and also, and I think this is where I needed help with wordsmithing. I'm not saying that the director confronts and responds to discrimination and racism and bias, but that the programs, projects, and initiatives are designed to confront and respond to discrimination, racism, and bias. But again, I think
how about saying works collaboratively within the town on programs, projects, and initiatives that focus on our shared humanity, and oh yeah, I lost my thread there. And
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'll work on that. I think
Okay.
that can be a second sentence about the programs, projects, and initiatives. But I think this speaks to that question about authority, meaning this person is not solely responsible for doing all the confrontation and responding to discrimination, racism, and bias that we come across. It's an educational and empowerment and engagement role that helps everyone else in our community, you know, do that work. So I think that's one piece that we want to be very clear about. And my sense was, and I got a sense even when I presented this in a budget last week, the position as a budget is people were like, well, you know, or someone had made a comment of, what do you mean by accountability? Like, how is this position going to hold people accountable? And, you know, I explained, no, accountability is just simply the value that the library, one of the library's core values that we're upholding and we're modeling and we're offering out as a learning opportunity to people. But we're certainly not going to say, okay, I'm going to call the police on Joe X because I think that they were biased or, you know, discriminatory. But it's really more about providing those resources to people to know what their rights are and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I will work on that sentence a little bit. But the purpose of this position is to educate, empower, and connect community. And I just thought we could leave it at that. There's been questions, obviously, about, you know, accountability, transparency and openness. So this position reports to the director of the library, who reports to the elected board of trustees. The position also consults with a volunteer community advisory and action committee called the Reading Alliance for Equity and Social Justice. I can add more to that or less than that, but I feel like most of that should be answered in the frequently asked questions. If I were posting this job, this is the information that you would need in that, as it's structured right now, which obviously you can change if you wish. The position will report to me, much like Michelle reports to me. It's the same level as Michelle and Lorraine and Jamie. It'd be part of a leadership team to try and be inclusive with all the other things that we're doing in the library. And just like with Michelle or Lorraine or Jamie or any of our librarians, that person might, you know, present to you at a meeting or invite you to a special event or something like that. You definitely would have access to them. And Terry actually asked some good questions today. You know, ultimately, the trustees, you have care and custody of the building. And the way the hierarchy works, technically, you are the ones who hire and fire me. And then anyone below me, you have some say in hiring and firing in, but I also have the discretion to hire. You basically let me have the discretion to hire and fire. Obviously, should I do something or hire or fire someone that you took umbrage with, that's your job, is to make sure, if I've done something that you feel is putting the library at risk, you have absolutely every right to override any personnel decision that I make. The difference is obviously, and I'm not sure if this is where the accountability or the transparency piece comes, that the select board can't hire or fire me, or Michelle for that matter, or a high school page. We hold that responsibility. This position could also report directly to you and sort of be sort of on par with me if you wished, but I think it's pretty clear that the ad hoc committee thought it would be best to report to me and then through me be accountable to the trustees. Any discussion on the reporting structure?
No.
No, I don't think so, Amy, but I do have like a question about, so, in the first paragraph there, it says, that the director, no, I'm sorry, the second one, that they consult with the Volunteer Community Advisory and Action Committee.
Yep.
And then I think in the next paragraph down, it says they will be building the board.
Help me and help us hire the person. So which came first, chicken and the egg, the Advisory and Action Committee, or do we hire the director and then they form the action committee? So I believe, again, Andrew, speak up if you think I'm wrong, is that the intent was to start building at least an interim action and advisory committee that would help with the hiring process, which then could, people could step away from, but that ultimately there would be this new director, and I think myself or the trustees would have the ability to agree to the makeup of the committee. Now, I don't want to have to go out and seek 8 to 14 community members. I would like to think the person that I hire could do that. But at the same time, I would also like to be a resource, and just like you would be responsible for work that I do, I would be responsible for work this person does. So I think, yes, I would be the person that's ultimately responsible for this, but the responsibility of getting it going would be that of the new position. Does that make sense what I said?
Yep.
Yeah, it does. Because I know, because I was thinking about it because I kind of thought in my head that you were, maybe, I don't know what I was thinking, because I just want to make sure, that someone doesn't read it. And, if we're going to if the board, or if the advisory and action board is going to be in place already and someone comes in thinking that they're building it, that could just like set things off on the wrong foot.
Right. I think that's an interim. I think there's definitely been discussion of an interim piece for the hiring, and then, people would reapply and I could consult. And again, to go back to the RCAFA/coalition model, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Erica works on that committee, and she doesn't go up to the chief and say, "Oh, hey, chief, what do you think about, can you tell me who I should appoint?" I am pretty sure that's not. First of all, does the chief feel like that's his particular role because he's doing the rest of the police? But also, we rely on Erica and her networking and her expertise to say, would really, it seems like we're missing someone from, we should have a teenager on the board maybe, and then just kind of work with that. So I think it really needs to be a collaborative, but this person needs to take ownership for what the needs are for both action and advising of this committee.
How long will people serve on the committee?
We can determine that, as we go along. I think obviously the first time we have to start with interim, and then you could start out now and we could just say people will generally serve for, a couple years and be reappointed, or we can say, term, service terms to be determined, at a later date. Because I think one
I
thing that
think-
you wouldn't want to do is have everybody start and then everybody end up
Yeah,
the same day.
I was just going to say you want to have things staggered
Yeah.
in terms of
So-
how long people, somebody might have a 1 or 2 year term, someone else might have 3. I would suggest that 3 would be the maximum for any term for anyone.
Yeah, and then you can
reappoint or whatever if they wish.
Yeah.
But give people, you want some turnover, I would guess.
Yeah. And I think it's nice because it has a range, 8 to 14 people. It has the opportunity. There's been some discussion of having ex officio members who participate and advise but don't vote. If we decide that there, if for some reason there needs to be a voting purpose versus, not all advisory committees have votes. Sometimes they're truly just discussion boards, boards that offer input. So I think the nitty gritty of that, because it's not a policy making board, because it has no authority, the detailed structure of that can be determined as needs arise, depending on availability and interest.
Amy, on the paragraph where you have highlighted to build,
Yes.
when you were just talking about that, you used the word ownership. How about saying they will have ownership, or they will be given ownership to build an effective and diverse? And then advisory and action board, again, back to, let's call it the same thing all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, they will be given ownership. There you go.
Okay. And I think we're calling it action advisory.
Well, didn't you read up above? You said it's an action committee called the Reading Alliance for Equity.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did. So that the committee is called the Reading is RESG. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put that in the glossary of terms, shall we?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Reading Alliance for Equity and Social Justice Committee.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll finish that.
Yep. Okay.
All right. And I think I did say I was going to update the mission and core values. I didn't really add much, just that to focus on the fact that I did add something about it does need to fulfill the library's mission as well as the Reading Alliance mission, not just the Reading Alliance missions. It needs to, as long as it's going to be in the library, it also needs to be aligned with what we're doing. And I think if it were in the school department, it would have the same thing. Yes, it would be a town-wide thing, but also it would have to remain aligned with the school's, mission and things like that. So thank you, Alice. We don't diffuse hostile situations. We diffuse hostile situations. And there were a couple different edits going on here. And some wordsmithing that were going on. I think, again, this is mostly about a job description, so there wasn't a huge amount of changes going on. And there should be a huge thing that says other duties as assigned. Is everybody comfortable with the revisions proposed here?
Yes.
Anything else you would really like to add? Have questions about?
There was one part when at the very end when you talk about qualifications and it says X number years of experience.
Yes, I saw that. That was empty.
Yes.
I don't know. There's tons of programs out there, and they're pumping out graduate students in social justice and social change and community service and psychology. It does seem like the ad hoc committee focused on 5 years of proven experience working with leadership capacity with humans or civil rights. So it seems like the number of years. The hiring for the human resource person, they've had to, kind of go out and come back and revisit what their expectations were, as well as come back and revisit the salary. So we may have to play a little with that. This is a position none of us have ever hired for. So
Was there any conversation about making this a part-time position instead of full-time?
Andrew?
Yes.
I think
Um,
it,
Yeah,
Wondering
it's,
with the budget constraints that we have, I wonder if we would get a better pool of candidates if it was a part-time position at that budget point.
I think that's something that the trustees don't really have to concern themselves with. That'll be something for town meeting to discuss, and the actual committee that gets set up to sort of hire the
Okay.
position based on the budget that's allocated.
Okay.
so as long as they just give us the budget, we agree
Yep.
on the job description, but we don't say how many hours, then we're kind of covered.
Okay.
Point, and I'll make sure all the language doesn't specify that as well. It's, because I agree, Andrew, this is something that even this job description will probably get modified and changed as we go to post. I think what we're trying to do here is agree on the intent and purpose of the job, of the position, of the committee, and
Yep.
Okay.
I think that seems to cover it.
And again, that'll be really decided. I mean, the committee doesn't report to the Board of Trustees or to Amy either. So they really sort of report to the appointing bodies.
Mhm.
So the exact description of what they do is not really up to us either. So
Okay. So
I
Amy,
guess-
to that point, there was somewhere where it said full-time, just for
I
you
think
to.
so. I can't remember where, but I will find
I
that.
did read it, so just so you can catch it somewhere.
Yeah. All right. All right. Is there any? Well, sorry, Nina. This is your meeting.
Oh, no. Is there anything else? Amy, are we voting tonight then on moving? How are we? So next step, let me just, so I understand. So next step, I know there's town meeting that is voting on this. But tonight, are we voting on like putting forward this position with the Board of Library Trustees support?
Yeah.
I don't know how, is that worded correctly?
Yeah, so I think, and I did run some of these changes as much as I had, by Ann Landry, and just to say, like, just so that they don't get surprised. But is there anything here? And I think, Andrew, you haven't done any sort of, huge stance to say that anything we've said tonight goes against what the committee's looking for. I think
No.
a successful, not successful. I think an outcome from this evening would be that the Board of Trustees agrees to create a new division with a director of equity and social justice as presented and amended at tonight's meeting, that to be funded in the FY22 budget. And if you want to include language also about that whole committee as well, you can. But I think the important part from the library trustees is basically saying, yep, this is real, we support this. And Amy's going to keep putting it in her budget between now and April.
Yep. I think that's exactly what we're doing.
Okay. All right. So unless there's anything else that we wanted to talk about with the FAQ or the position description, do we have a motion then to support the new Department of Equity? Division of Equity and Social Justice, which will be included in the FY22 budget as amended tonight. That was clunky, but
I'm going to type something in the chat. Hang on. Motion.
So moved.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Wait till I actually type them. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve
in adding an equity and social justice division in the library with a director of equity and social justice for the FY budget year. Does that look right?
Yeah,
And then as presented and amended.
as presented and amended
With
tonight.
position
Yeah.
and description and FAQ as amended tonight, 12-14-2020.
Okay, great. So then, do we have a motion to approve adding a equity and social justice division in the library with a director of equity and social justice for the FY22 budget with the position description and frequently asked questions as presented and amended in tonight's meeting of December 14th, 2020?
Andrew,
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and then we will take a vote. So Andrew,
Yes.
Monette,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Alice,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
and I say yes as well. Okay. Great. And the only other thing tonight is other business. So is there any other business tonight that we have?
so
We are going to be starting to circulate Chromebooks and hotspots. Actually, we started to do that today. And we do not plan on having any fines on those. And so overdue fines. If they lose them, then there would be one. So for the I think we're doing it for the January, right, Amy? So for the January meeting, we'd like to have the fines and fees or borrowing policy amended to state that. That's right.
yes,
Right.
that is correct.
then-
Yeah. So the lending,
and-
I think we call it the lending policy.
Mm-hmm. And that's also with the subject to change. So basically, when COVID's over, that might change.
Okay. Amy, just a quick question. Has there been any issues with the Wi-Fi hours that we had kind of looked at last time? Okay, great.
Not a peep.
Just checking.
Well, yes, today.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll
Um,
just state, I just want to, part of the reason why there might not be is because Kevin from IT just changed the
Okay.
hours.
Oh, okay.
That was,
right.
sometimes takes a little while.
Yeah, no problem. Just checking.
I have two other things very quickly. Alice and Sherry and Michelle, would you like to unveil? We could approve it this evening if you wish.
Is this the
Sherry?
vision statement or?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Alice, do you want to say it? I don't have it up on my
Sure.
screen.
Let me get my glasses on. So we tackled the vision statement, and after a little consultation with Pam Fitzgerald as well, came to a decision on evolving together to strengthen communication, equity, collaboration, and learning.
I like it.
Like it.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Great
Was,
work.
in our
You could,
just the recent conversation, there was an awful lot of collaboration and communication and equity in that, in the meat of what we were just talking about. So that fits well, I think.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you guys for working on that. That came out great.
I loaded up a little motion. Should anyone
Yes,
want
I
to
just noticed that, Amy. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, I think thank you for taking that on. I know that is not easy, but I think it came out great.
And also, I just wanted to say one thing. I had only read the report, the strategic report once when I brought up that I wasn't happy with the vision statement last time, but the more I read it, the more I really, really liked it. And I felt badly I didn't know enough to credit you with the really good work that you did. It's just so different from any other we've done. It's direct, it's to the point, it's creative, and it's very concrete. And I just thought it was a huge step forward. I loved it. So that's all.
That's
Thank
great.
you for that.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the new vision statement that was presented tonight at tonight's meeting?
So move.
Second.
Okay, so I'll just go through. Cherry,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Monette,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Alice,
Yes.
and I say yes as well.
Yay. Look at this, we're cruising and making
Getting awesome.
tracks tonight. Speaking of making tracks, the only other business I have is just we are, and it is only Monday. There's a storm predicted for Thursday. And being COVID, because we have reservations and appointments, we have already started trying to shut down appointments for Thursday. We will open them up the minute it looks like the storm is going to disappear and it's only going to be 1 to 3 inches. But depending on where you looked, as of 3 or 4 hours ago, it was anywhere from 3 to 5 to 9 to 12. So it's all up in the air. And I can't tell how much of it is just because they're looking for something to report on other than COVID and politics. But there were some pretty scary numbers that were floating around for sort of the outside the Boston area, but it could only be a couple inches. So we have the normal protocols in place. I have reminded Nina and Monette of, and I'll share it with here. In general, sort of 1 to 3 inches, not a big deal. 3 to 5, actually, it's not even really that much of a big deal unless it's happening right when school opens, and school's not really open now anyway. Really sort of 6+, we really start considering closing. 8 is probably an automatic closing. And the priorities are, we definitely have to look at other pieces of towns. It is different right now with schools being in a hybrid model, so I'm not sure how that really affects it. But the very first thing that is important is the DPW safety. So if this is extended snowfalls and there's going to be multiple shifts, then we can't expect to all be first in line. So number one is safety, then it's road safety, then it's fire and police safety, and making sure they can all handle what they're doing. And then it's sort of like the schools, the library, and the town hall kind of get into the mix. But there's a whole bunch of work that gets done before anyone even asks me if the library is going to be open or closed. There's a lot of negotiation that goes on with emergency response and stuff like that. But the other thing is with if there is excess snow, so a lot of times, as you know, in the first pass, they'll just leave a lot of snow backed up into the parking lot, and they do this all over town. Snow removal, for the most part, DPW tries to be sensitive to residential neighborhoods and do it, accordingly, but they also have to do it. Obviously, they can't clear a high school parking lot if there are cars parked in the parking lot, and same thing with the library. So they do the best they can. They are aware of schools and places that are in residential neighborhoods, so they try not to do it very, very early in the morning or really, really super late at night. The only time that would happen is if, again, we were talking about shifts, and that is the only time that they could do it safely for the safety of the drivers, because there's a lot of laws and regulations that go into how many hours they can work, how many hours they need on a break, and things like that. So patience during New England weather is appreciated. We would make the call for Thursday. Because it's a late opening on Thursday at 1 o'clock, we would probably make the call by 5 o'clock on Wednesday, and we would know whether the library would be closed from 1 to 9. So that's usually how that would work. If we were opening at 9, I'd probably make the call a little earlier in the day. All right.
Sounds good. So unless there's anything else, I guess that's it for tonight. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Good.
Okay. So Cherry,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Monette, that you said yes, right, Monette? Okay. John
Yes.
and Alice,
Yes.
and I say yes as well. Okay.
Okay. All
Awesome.
right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all, and
guys.
we'll see you later. Good night. Thanks,
Good
Peter.
night, everybody.
Yep. Good night.
Safe.
Bye-bye.